So we have to read the word problem and create relationships, create equations from the word problem. So in example 1, it says a small bus can transport 12 students and a large bus can transport 24 students. In total, all the buses at a school can transport 780 students. There are 20 more small buses than there are large buses. Let's create a system of equations to come up with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to color code things here. I am going to color code a couple of sentences. I'm going to color code what I think is the easier sentence first. There are 20 more small buses than there are large buses. I'm going to choose variables that I think help me remember what I'm talking about. I'm going to use do those seem like good letters to use? S for small buses, L for large buses. We want to choose letters that, when we're doing our math, kind of keep us grounded with what we're thinking. Now in purple, I underlined that there are 20 more small buses than there are large buses. So I'm going to try to make an equation, and an equation makes things equal. It's obviously not true that there's the same number of small buses than large buses. This is currently wrong, that small buses equal large buses. Could I do something to this to make them equal? Okay? If there are 20 more small buses, would you agree that this S number is bigger than this L number? Because there's 20 more of these. So if I wanted to make these equations the same, I would have to add 20 to this side to make them the same. Because if this is 60, this is 40, right? Because there's 20 more. So to make the equations the same, I would have to add 20 on the large side to make them equal. So we have to take a sentence, and I underlined that sentence in purple, interpret it, and come up with an equation that makes sense for that. We actually have to use both of these sentences to create our next equation. All the buses at the school can transport 780 students. If S is the number of small buses, each small bus can take 12 people, so 12 times S would be the number of people that the small buses can take. And 24 times the number of large buses is how many people could be on the large buses. In total, it tells us this can transport 780 students. This is the hardest part in the word problems. Can you read and interpret and come up with an equation that makes sense? So we have to do a fair bit of thinking here. We have to be able to say, okay, the total number of people is 780, and each small bus takes 12. So if I had 10 small buses, that would take 120 people. Each large bus takes 24. If I had 10 large buses, that would take 240 people. And this is a great example of, if you read this question and started guessing and checking, it would probably take you a fair bit of time before you would come up with the right answer. You'd have to try a lot of things that work or don't work before you figure them out. Can you see that substitution is set up beautifully in this one? Do we have a variable that's easy to get by itself? I would say the S is pretty easy to get by itself. You see, it's already by itself. In equation 1, so we can label. Here's my equation 1, here's my equation 2. If there's two things I don't know, I need to have two equations in order to solve. And I can use one of my three techniques, graphing, substitution, or elimination. This is a beautiful question for substitution because the S is already by itself. So how does substitution work again? You take equation 2 and you substitute where the S is. I can now substitute in L plus 20. Plus 24L equals 708. And after you've substituted, now it's just a grade 9 solving equations question. Can you do all of your order of operations, combine your like terms? We want to get L by itself. So with the brackets here, I would say I can distribute. That will give me 12L plus 240 24L equals 708. Dentistry classes will now begin. So, do I have like terms? 12L and 24L, that makes 36L. I can subtract 240 on this side, so it's on the same side as my like term. And 780 minus 240 gives me 540. $540 divided by 36 is, probably need a calculator for that. So we take out our calculator. And it should make sense in a question like this that we get a nice number. Because if a school has 3.2 large buses, you'd be a little bit worried. Especially if you had to go on the 0.2 large bus for the field trip. It's like, what does that mean? It only has like two tires, not even one tire. So now we've got our large bus is 15. We need to get our small buses too. I would definitely, between equation 1 and equation 2, do you see that substituting back into equation 1 looks a lot easier? Plug in 15 for L. And to verify your solution, we have to check equation 1. Equation 1 said S equals L plus 20. If you plug in S at 35 and L at 15, it works. If we check equation 2, equation 2 said that 12S plus 24 I'm wondering how formal do you want to be? Like there would be some teachers that if later on in grade 11 and 12 they would actually deduct you a mark for what I did here. If we wanted to be really formal, we would say, this is the left side of your equation, this is the right side of your equation. Since you're verifying, you don't know if they're equal. You want them to be equal, but we're verifying, so we draw a line instead, then you plug in 35 on this side, you plug in 15 on this side. And only if they're the same can you add that check mark. So same thing here, if I would verify this properly. There's my left side, there's my right side. I'm going to plug in my answers. So S is 35, and L was supposed to be 15. 12 times 35 is 420. 24 times 15 is 360. And that is verifying our answer. So you're going to have a word problem on your quiz on Wednesday. This is what it entails. You have to read the question and write the two equations. So, example 2, if the hardest part is reading the question and writing the equations, that's what we need to practice on our own. So try to just write the equations for example 2. I'll pause the video, and you can check with your neighbor. All right, let's see how you did on this one. I am going to choose L for length and W for width. Seems like a good choice. Then we have two things. I feel like this one is the easier sentence. Its length is 2 feet longer than the width. So obviously width and length are not the same. Which one's bigger? The length one is bigger, right? So if I wanted to make them equal, I would have to add 2 to this side. The length is 2 feet longer than the width, so the width plus 2 equals the length. You can write it that way. That's my equation number 1. Equation number 2, I'm going to underline this sentence. The perimeter is 16. Well, if you had a flag, you would have length and length and width and width. What's perimeter? Perimeter is adding those all up. So 2 lengths plus 2 widths would have to equal 16. That's my equation number 2. The hard part has been done. We want to use the elimination technique. Okay? So, I'm going to take my equation 1 and I'm going to subtract W on both sides. So I get length minus width equals 2, and 2 length plus 2W equals 16. That's my equation 2. First of all, we have to set things up so my columns are the same. Okay? Probably looking at this one and going, oh, but it was so easy for substitution. I agree. I would have probably used substitution if I had a choice, but it said to use elimination. So in using elimination, we first had to get all of our columns lined up. So I had to rearrange equation 1, and I did that by subtracting W on both sides. Now I need to eliminate something. I'm going to choose to eliminate the W's, because all I would have to do is multiply equation 1 by 2, and my W's would have the same number in front, but one would be positive, one would be negative. So now my equation 1 is 2L minus 2W equals 4, and equation 2 is 2L plus 2W equals 16. And now I'm ready to eliminate. I can add my equations together. This will be 4L plus 0 equals 20. Divide both sides. by 4, and I get L equals 5. I can now go back to equation number 1, and if L is 5, 5 minus W equals 2. Move the W to this side, move the 2 to this side. The length is 5, the width is 3. If we were officially verifying, we write out our equation, set up our left side, set up our right side, plug in our answers. Equation 1 verifies. Verify equation 2. Write out the equation. Label the left side and the right side. Plug in our answers. 10 plus 6 is 16. Equation 2 verifies as well. So there's some homework listed there. There's also homework. Yeah, there's homework listed after all of the word problems. I just wanted to start doing some word problems because you're going to have some on your quiz on Wednesday. On Wednesday is just the graphing and substitution.